Hi, and welcome to How to Write a UROP Proposal Workshop, or a informative video, rather. The first thing that I want to do is kind of introduce you to the UROP program, Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, just in case you're not familiar with that, and give you kind of some of the basic details to what the program is, so you kind of know what you would be writing this proposal for. So it's a program where you get paid to work with a faculty mentor, someone on campus who's doing research. You get to do research with them. And you get to do research or creative work in any discipline on campus. And so this is very open to any field, any research project, any creative project that you're working on with your faculty mentor. You get paid a $1,200 stipend for approximately 120 hours in the first semester of participating in the program, and there's an option to renew for a second semester as well. And the funding is the same amount first or second semester. So you can have one semester of $1,200 in, let's say, fall, and then another semester, maybe the next summer, and it's another $1,200. If you think about how long the average semester is, 120 hours is approximately 10 hours a week. It's something like 9 hours a week in a fall and spring semester if you're working the same number of hours every week and not taking any breaks. And then it's something like 12 hours if you're working in the summer, just because those are shorter semesters. So then who's eligible to participate in UROP? The goal is not to make it an exclusive program where students aren't allowed to participate in it, but just in case, let's talk about these real fast. So the program is open to matriculated U students, and matriculated, if that's a new word for you, it just means you're enrolled, right? You'd like a degree at some point in your future. So a matriculated undergraduate student, not on any kind of probation. You do have to be enrolled as an undergraduate student during the semester of the award, unless it's summer. You can be enrolled in the summer, but you don't have to be, just because so many students don't have to take summer classes. And so that's not a requirement. Instead, the requirement would be that you are enrolled in the surrounding fall and spring semesters. Applicants must be eligible for university employment in order to receive the UROP stipend. And that, that's also open to University of Utah Dreamers with or without DACA. If for any of the variety of reasons that you might not be eligible for employment, but you still want to participate in the program, just contact our office's director, Dr. Annie Isabel Fukushima, and her email is at the bottom of the slide. There are some other ways to participate in the program if it's, without compensation, or if it's in a scholarship-based program instead. Applicants have to have an established relationship with their mentor at the time of application. Certainly not necessarily at the time of watching this video. If you are interested in doing UROP and you don't have a mentor yet, that's okay. You can apply in whatever future semester you've got that relationship established. And the goal of this is just so that students know who they're working with and what they're working on, and can write the proposal, a strong proposal, a competitive proposal based on that work and that relationship. Mentors must be current University of Utah faculty members or grad students or postdocs who have completed mentor development program. And then there are some staff who have done that as well. And then a student may be awarded a maximum of 2 semesters of UROP funding. Like we said on the last slide, there's 1 semester. We call it a new semester. It's just your first one. And then a renewal semester. An important piece of information, those do not have to be consecutive. So you certainly could do it in, say, fall and spring, back to back, but you could also do it in fall and then the following summer, or 2 years from now. Really, whichever 2 semesters make the most sense for you to get funded to do research, those are the semesters to apply for. Okay, so then once you apply, you've written your proposal, we've been able to award you some funding. These are the requirements in the program. And the goal with this slide isn't to say, like, you need to, memorize all of these right now, but rather it's to introduce you to what those expectations are up front, so you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. The very first thing is that you have to attend a mandatory orientation. And so we will certainly give you this information again several times once you're awarded. And so again, don't feel like you have to memorize these right now. I just wanted to throw them up to show you, they're manageable. know what you're getting into and know that it's a realistic thing for you to complete in a semester. Okay, so now we'll move on to kind of the parameters to the proposal. And later in the video, we're going to look at section by section examples. But for right now, just like what is involved in the proposal at all. So it's a 4 to 6 page double spaced. So if you're single spacing it, it's 2 to 3 pages of content. Project proposal submitted through an online application form. And we'll talk more about the form too. It involves your mentor's recommendation. And so you write the proposal that you put into this application form. Your mentor also fills out a recommendation about you and the project and why you should get funding. And then we send completed proposals. So we get both of those pieces, yours and your mentor's. We put them together and we send completed proposals out to independent faculty reviewers in whatever school or college your project is housed in. And that's usually, you know, what your mentor's affiliation is. So let's say you're working with somebody in art history, right? They're going to go to the College of Fine Arts. They are increasingly competitive. And so you do want to take time to write a strong proposal. I cannot encourage you strongly enough to start early. So every semester we have a deadline. If you start the week before the deadline, you might not have enough time to write the proposal and get all the adequate feedback, your mentor's feedback, and then time to revise that before you have to submit the final one. So start early, work on it over time, and give yourself enough time to do edits and revisions. And then again, there is the option to renew for a second semester, and the applications are identical for that renewal proposal. So every section, all of the requirements are the same, except there are some additional questions on the application form that just ask you how your first semester went. And it's totally fine. I didn't mention this before. It is totally fine if you do the first semester of UROP funding on one project with one mentor, and then your second one on a different project with the same mentor, or a completely different mentor, different project altogether. That's totally fine. And even then, when you are filling out your renewal application, you'll talk about how that first semester went with your mentor and kind of why you're switching directions. Okay, so UROP deadlines. We do fund every semester, so fall, spring, and summer. And so there's always an upcoming deadline. And so check out the OUR's webpage, specifically the UROP page. And on that page, you'll find all of the upcoming deadlines. So right now, we're recording it about a month before a deadline, but each semester that date will change. So check that website out for upcoming deadlines. Okay, so then the proposal that you've written, how does it get evaluated? What are the reviewers looking for? What are the kind of scores and the funding decisions based on? That's what the evaluation criteria are. So we've got 5 areas that get their own scores, impact the where the awards go each semester. And the first is project quality. So this kind of sounds like, is your science good? And that's not exactly it. It's this criteria is more about the overall effectiveness of your writing, how well written, how well represented is the work in this proposal. And so it kind of incorporates a little bit of each of the following sections that get their own scores as well, because it's just like, how strong is this proposal? How well represented, again, is this project in the proposal? The second criteria is plan and timeline. So you'll list specific activities that you'll be doing, concrete, realistic timeline for how long those activities take you to do, when you'll be doing them, what all is involved in your project, and when it will be completed. And the more concrete you can be, the better. We'll talk more about that later, but I don't know, it bears repeating. The more concrete and specific you can be in that timeline section, the better. You also get a score for suitability of the mentoring relationship. So that's basically like, are you working with somebody who has a good project design for you, right? They're actually hands-on mentoring you. You're getting the guidance and the support that you need, and they're a relevant expert in the field of the work that you're doing. Impact on your education. So the potential of this experience overall to enhance your education and your ability to achieve your professional goals, whatever those are. And then there's an additional section on contribution to equity that comes up in the mentor's reference form. You don't have to worry about that. You don't write a section on it, but we list it here just because it does influence the overall score of the proposal. Okay, so then you're writing a proposal. How does that work? What goes into that? So there is an application form, as I said before. It will ask you for a title. So you have to come up with a title for your project. It does not have to be the same title that you end up like publishing in a professional journal, but just a title to help us kind of figure out what you're doing in this project. It does help if you make it specific. So if you just said study on molecules, that might not be helpful. You certainly could title it that, but you might want to be more specific. So title, applicant name, mentor name, and their department. And so you do have to know where they are kind of primarily housed on campus. And then there are 5 specific sections, and your proposal can only include those sections. So just write it based on the goals of each of these sections, and then you don't have to worry about adding more stuff in. And then we're going to go section by section through kind of what the purpose of each of these sections is in just a moment. Please write your proposal in some kind of word processing system, Microsoft Word, for example. And then you're going to copy and paste each section over into a text box on the application form. That feels weird. It's pretty standard for application. Lots of different applications, you know, IRB applications kind of work the same way. You want to keep that working document for yourself so you have a record of that somewhere, so you don't just submit it and then it goes into the ether and then you don't have a record of what you wrote. You also want to have that Word document or word processing system document so that you can get feedback from your mentor, feedback from other folks, so that you can edit and revise and make it as strong as possible. But then you will just copy and paste it over into the text boxes on the form. You can provide all images, tables, graphs, etc., any of the kind of visual accompaniment that you need to make your argument, that you need to make your work very clear, as appendices in a no more than 1 page PDF file, and you'll upload that to the form. I would encourage you to try very hard not to rely on visuals, if at all possible. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you absolutely need it. But just because you can't put it in the text box and it makes it a little bit disjointed, you want to make sure that in the text of your proposal, you're still explaining what's in the image, what's in the table, why it's important, and how they can access that. Another note about this application form system: footnotes and endnotes, don't paste into it. It will not retain your formatting. And so that kind of citation style doesn't really work in this system. So instead, use in-text reference forms. So APA and MLA have good examples for that. And then you'll provide your full references in the references text box. Some students have been confused about what references mean. This is not personal references like it would be for a job. This is your citations and your literature references that you'll put in that text box. And even then, your references will be unformatted, so your italicization will be removed. And that's okay. That is not your fault. You will not be docked any points or judged harshly because our form eats your formatting. So don't worry about that when that happens. Upon submission of the form, you will receive an email. It's a confirmation email that says, yeah, you've done this, you've submitted it. You have to forward that to your mentor. That confirmation contains a link to the mentor recommendation form that your mentor will not have if you don't send it to them. So you absolutely must forward that confirmation email onto your mentor in order for them to fill out their recommendation and complete your application. It's your responsibility to ensure the mentor receives that email. And it is very sad when it happens that that you don't do that, and then your mentor doesn't have the reference form and your application isn't complete. So please don't do that. Make sure you get that email from us. And if you don't, let us know so that we can figure out, you know, is there a typo in your email or something like that, so that you can forward that on. Okay, so now the fun part, the part that you're actually watching this video for, we're going to go through sample proposals, sample sections from proposals, and talk about what went well, right? Why are they helpful? How can they be used as sort of a model or a guide for writing your own proposal? I have a bunch of caveats to say up front. Use them as a guide, not as a formula. If you just try to copy and paste your own information into exactly the same format, it won't work. So what we're looking for is formatting and flow, the various ways that you can organize and explain your required content, and specifically how to use those required sections. Again, caveat, these proposals, these examples aren't perfect. They're good examples, and they were awarded in the semester that the student applied with that proposal. But every semester is different, right? It depends on the applicant pool each semester. And so again, these are guides, they are examples to kind of think about how you might use your own content in this format, but they're not formula. Okay, so the first section, statement of problem or topic of research or creative work. So this is basically the abstract version of your project. When you're reading scholarly journal articles, you will often, almost always, see an abstract. They are short, they just kind of outline what is going on in the overall paper and the overall project, and that is what this section is for you in this proposal. So the purpose here is to clearly set out what you are talking about. What topic, what issue you will be addressing in your project. You want to make clear that it's a concrete and important project to be done. So things that we'll notice about the sample sections that we're going to look at is they are clear, they are concise. This is one of the shorter sections in the proposal, and they all make a statement about the project's impact or significance. And basically what that means is how does the project impact either, a population that you're working with, your field, generally the world? How does the results from the project or the anticipated results, how does that get implicated in a wider setting? Okay, so a lot of these slides are quite text heavy because they are literally lifted from someone's proposal. And so I encourage you to pause me, read this text at your own pace, and then start the video back up when you have read it. Okay, so what I want you to notice about this section are the highlighted bits in red. So this first one, the very first sentence, right, is existing literature has found that conflict resolution is important to the healthy development of children, and that perspective taking may assist children in reaching those resolutions. There is, however, relatively little research on something else, and that's the thing we're going to talk about in this project. And so there's a very important rhetorical move being made here where it goes from the background, the introduction to the overall topic, to and now what's the purpose of this work, right? So we know some stuff, we don't know something important. That's what this project is focused on, is finding out the stuff that's important that we don't currently know. The second set of red letters are that impact statement that I talked about on the last slide. So the results may suggest ways in which parents and other caregivers can improve perspective taking in their children, right? And additionally, it might indicate directions for future research on this topic. And so we get that very broad introductory, we're talking about conflict resolution, but there's something specific we don't know. This project is going to look at that something specific in this way. And it's important for us to do that because it's got these implications for improving perspective taking in children and future research on this area. Okay, this one's longer, so the text is even smaller. So again, I encourage you to pause me, read it at your own pace, and then start the video back up. Okay, so again, in this section, we get the same rhetorical moves, but they look a little different. So you have a whole bunch of information about chiral molecules setting up the background, right? Giving you the introductory information about what these are, why they matter, some stuff that we know about them. And then in this first chunk of red letters, we get While simple two-dimensional models have recently shed some light on thermodynamics of chiral crystallization, predictions made that these two-dimensional simulations are not necessarily applicable to three-dimensional systems. In fact, experiments have shown that quasi-two-dimensional systems of chiral molecules on surfaces have a much higher propensity to separate into conglomerates than bulk solutions, right? So we know some stuff about two-dimensional models, doesn't translate over into three-dimensional models. We're going to look at that. That's what this project is about. And then the second sentence or the second chunk, the last sentence of the section is that impact statement. By analyzing the thermodynamic landscape and crystallization kinetics of these models, we aim to predict the likelihood of spontaneous separation based on molecular structure and interactions, which is important. So you see the same two really, really important rhetorical moves being made in different kinds of projects, right? So they're from different subject matter, they're different lengths, and they come in a different place in the proposal or in the section, and they still do their job. And so there are various ways to do this, but you want to make sure that you are giving background information, the purpose of what you're doing in your project, a little bit of information about how you're going to do that work, something about why this matters, and that strong impact statement as well. Okay, so relevant background literature review section. This is the second section in the proposal. It is typically, importantly, the longest section in the proposal. And so we only have one example because I could only fit one of them onto a slide. And it's quite a short example. But basically, this is the longer version of the same thing that you just wrote in the first section. So like I said, it's the statement of problem section is that abstract version. It's really really quick, really clear. And then in this section, you're going to expand on all of that information. So there are a couple of purposes all at the same time. So you want to make clear that you understand where your research lies in the broader context. That's what this literature review sort of thing is. You're pulling in all of the relevant literature to what you're doing and supporting the background, what is known, what isn't known, how you're doing it. You're weaving citational support into this section and making it a bit longer. And it helps exhibit that you're engaged in your project already, enough to be able to effectively pursue it. You understand, why it's important, how it came about, and how you're going to engage in the work. So things to notice, you do need to include citations. There's no magical number of citations that's appropriate, but it is a literature review section, and so there should be several. You certainly don't have to cite the entire history of your field. That's not possible, but you do want to include, the most important citations, both in terms of foundational work and recent work that inform the direction that you're moving. And also they support the claim that the project is important. And then hopefully there's a reiteration of that impact statement at the end of your section as well. Okay, so like I said, this is quite long. The text is very small. Please pause, read at your own pace, and then we can move on. Okay, so specific activities and timeline. This is a very important section, and it is also rather challenging for lots of very legitimate, valid reasons. So the purpose here is to provide both the larger context of where your 120 fundable hours through the program that you're applying to, where that fits into several ways that it could fit into your larger context. It could be, or you might want to allude to how you're going to be involved in this research project for more than one semester, if that's true, and how this chunk of work contributes to the larger overall project. It is very rare that a project will start and finish fully complete in 120 hours in one semester of a student's work. And so, if you're like, I don't know how to write my timeline because this is just one very small part of the 4 years that I'm doing research, or the 4 years that the project is going on, even if I'm only doing one semester of work. that is most often the case that this is just a small chunk. So you want to both allude to the larger context and specifically talk about what you'll be doing this semester in the 120 fundable hours from our program. And then you also want to kind of weave in some evidence that you're working with your mentor, that you haven't just been left out in the wilderness alone, but that you have somebody guiding you and supporting you through this process, telling you, giving you feedback on your, step-by-step or daily tasks, and giving you professional development opportunities as you go as well. So things to notice about the sample proposals: the steps will all differ because you're doing different work. And so there's a great deal of variety in these sections between projects and between proposals. Your actual timelines will also differ pretty widely, and how it's presented can differ and still be very, very effective. So here's one format. So we have a little blurb, and then we have a kind of chunk of weeks breakdown. So we have weeks 1 through 5, weeks 6 through 10, weeks 11 through 15, with a brief description and estimated hours, and then we have total hours at the end. A few things to note. This is a nice model of how you might format your proposal or format your timeline. I think that you would do better to include more detail and more concrete time reference than what is provided here. And so please don't be this concise. Give more information. Regardless of how you break up your time chunks, though, you do want it to add up to 120 hours, since that is what you are applying for funding for. And so it's great that this has the different chunks of time and then the estimated time, and then it just very clearly adds up to 120 hours. So you do want to check your math on your hours, but you can do it in this fashion. You could do it month by month, chunks of week, task, doesn't matter. Here's another format. This is week by week. And it's nice because it, let's say January 27th, we're determining if glucose further prevents leakage of protein product. And then we have some more information about why that's useful. So that helps your reviewers understand both what you're doing and why it's important that it be done, and it be done when you're going to do it. What I highlighted in these red letters, again, is I think a helpful example of what you can do if your work reaches a point where what you will continue to do after that point is contingent on what's happened in your timeline, but that hasn't happened yet when you're writing the proposal, right? And so this is one of the most challenging parts of writing a timeline. It's all projected time. It hasn't happened yet. And so you will be making adjustments as you go on. And that's totally fine. That's standard. That's just how research works. But this is how you can address that in your proposal. So the time allotted to performing experiments based on past results, right? And so there's a point at which this project, it depends on how it's gone. So we're going to do weeks 1 through 10. We're going to reassess, we're going to evaluate where we are, and we're going to make adjustments and move forward. And so you can totally write that contingency into your timeline in this kind of way. Here's another example of a format. Big paragraph up front, clear, very simple timeline at the end. If you're doing this, I would make sure that in the paragraph up front, you give a lot of detail to what data coding means. Don't just leave data coding out there by itself, especially if it's going to be a 70-hour chunk of your work. You want to tell us what that means. What are you coding? How are you doing it? What's your method? Why are you doing it that way? If there are subtasks to coding, so I'm making things up, coding has 5 steps. You're going to do steps 1 and 2 in the first 4 weeks. They overlap in this way. They take roughly this amount of time, and that amounts to 70 hours. But you can do it in the paragraph and then the concrete timeline at the very end. Okay, relationship of the project to your mentor's expertise and evidence that they're mentoring you. So there are a couple of purposes here. This tends to be one of the shorter sections, roughly a paragraph. And so don't feel like you have to relay everything your mentor's ever done, because it's probably too much to put in this short of a proposal. So aim for roughly a paragraph. And so you're going to be talking about the relationship of specifically what is it that they do. You're going to give us some information, some evidence that that's what they do, and that you know that's what they do. So this is you're utilizing your faculty's specific expertise and getting what you can from their very specialized knowledge, right? And so if you're working in a faculty in sociology, they don't just know all of sociology really well. Certainly they're going to have a good foundation in that, but they also do something very specific within that much broader label. And so this is helping us or helping you identify what is it that they do in that very specific way, and then conveying that to your reviewers. And then also weaving in some information that they're actually supporting you, right? That you have regular access to them, you have conversations with them, they're helping you build your skills and revise your own research, technique, your practice. It's also important to note that this part of the evaluation, the criteria that get the scores and the comments specifically, it does take into account some of your mentor's portion of the application. And so you are not in total control of how this one falls out, but knowing that can be really helpful, because hopefully it prompts you to have conversations with your mentor about what they're putting in their reference. Certainly you won't see their reference form, but like what activities, what professional development opportunities are they thinking about giving you in virtue of you doing this project with them, and making sure that you overlap with them. So what you're saying in this section also, it maps onto what they're saying in their own reference. So again, I encourage you to pause me, read this at your own pace. And so what's nice here, right? So we have this faculty member has conducted research in a bunch of different areas. Some of his most recent and impactful work has been specifically on biosensors, right? So we move from renewable energy, biofuels, quite broad, down to biosensors. In the past 5 years, he's been doing something even more specific. Look at all this evidence that he's an incredibly successful mentor. And then here are our concrete plans. We're going to meet bi-weekly to discuss my project, weekly meetings with a grad student that I'm also working with. And part of that is because safety is really important. And so this section kind of checks off all those boxes. We know what the mentor is doing. We know that you're getting access to their specific expertise, and they're really working with you and making sure that you're getting a good experience. Okay, again, pause me, read it at your own pace, and then start the video again. You'll see that this section does the same kind of thing as the last one, right? So we have a joint appointment in gender studies and sociology, faculty affiliate in family planning in the University of Utah School of Medicine. And so we're moving from broad level. This person knows a whole bunch of stuff. Specifically, this is what they work on, though, particularly interested in very narrow topic. I also like this very last sentence. The faculty member plans to include the product on a website, right? And so there's this permanent kind of findable, helpful kind of public education website that's going to come out of this. A research deliverable. That's what I was trying to think of the word for. There's a nice research deliverable at the end, and they've written this into the section about their mentor's expertise. Okay, this is the very last section. You're almost done listening to me talk to you. So relationship to your goals. The purpose of this section is to do a couple of things, and you can do it really, you can do it really linearly. Certainly you don't have to, but it can be a very short section. So the goals are to show that your project facilitates your educational and career goals, whatever they are. You don't have to want to do anything in particular. Grad school is nice, but that's not the only option in the world. And so the goal here is to show that you've thought about how the project fits into whatever your goals are. If it's grad school, med school, another kind of professional school, an industry job, your ability to participate in life more comprehensively, more thoughtfully. All of those are fine. So you'll tell us what the goal is. You'll tell us some specific stuff about your experience in this project, your tasks, your skill building in this project, and how that facilitates your goals. Things to notice, they all look different, and they absolutely should. You are all different people, you have different goals, and you're doing different work. And so there's not one right answer. There's not one right way to write this section. Yeah, and they're all legitimate reasons that a UROP experience could be important and meaningful for a student. Again, pause, read at your own pace, restart the video, or start the video back up. Okay, so this person is working towards a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering, and they don't know if they want to do medicine or a grad degree in engineering. So the project is actually going to help them make up their mind about their goals, which is why I included this as an example, because it's fine if you don't know exactly what you want to do. And the parts in the red lettering show us why, regardless of which direction they end up going, this experience is still going to be important for them, right? So we've got wet lab techniques. We've got cell cultures and microscopy. We're getting very specific about the experience and the techniques and the skills that you're going to get. It would be directly applicable to my coursework, right? Because MATLAB is a program used by the department and used in lots of these different fields. And it's going to be a great foundation moving forward either way. This person is obtaining a mechanical engineering degree, emphasis on robotic systems, which is really cool. And their long-term objective is to become an engineer, right? So the long-term goal is to work in specifically at Boston Dynamics, a company. So the goal is industry, and they know exactly what they want to do. And so they've got to get a PhD in order to obtain that goal. And this research is going to help them get that PhD and that industry job. And they also talk about programming and extensive coding, which even if they switch directions later will be helpful for them. Okay, so that is it. That is the end of the presentation. There are some additional resources. The Writing Center tutors are always helpful. They can give you an idea of if you are achieving the overall goals of each section. We do have a number of education series events that are helpful, writing abstracts, strong writing in different areas. And so you might watch some of those videos to help you prepare, help you think through how you want to write your own proposal. And then beginning in fall 2022, we are going to have what we are calling Funding Fridays, underline on fun. It's a bi-monthly drop-in workshop focused on proposals and applications for various funding programs. And so check out our website for more information and for specific dates about when those will be held and when you can just kind of pop in and get some feedback on what you're doing. If you have any questions about anything ever related to undergraduate research, and certainly UROP and our funding, you can find us at our.utah.edu, or you can email us at our@utah.edu. And you can also call, and that is the office phone number.